Hello, my name is Walter Wimberly, and I'm an assistant professor of computer science. Now, in this mini-series within the series of questions I'm sometimes asked as a computer science professor, I want to kind of talk about the state college system. So we're going to look at some pros and cons of the state college system and what you might expect as a student. So let's get started. Now, in my personal experience, I attended what's now known as a state college system. Back when I attended, it was called a community college, and before that, if you talk to some people, you might hear them refer to it as junior college. So that's the first negative actually that you might hear, is that they've changed names because of public perception over the years. There is a perception that the colleges are not as good, and hence the term junior or community and now state college. Now, I believe that is a perception as someone who did both attend and teach at that type of college. But why do they have that perception? Well, it actually has to do with one of the advantages. And your state college system, in most cases, cannot deny entry to any student who registers to attend. This means that maybe you weren't the best student in high school, or you could have fallen asleep through every class. As long as you have your GED or a high school diploma and you register for the session, you can start to attend. And some people think, well, that's a negative connotation. You're not attending with the best and the brightest. The state college students that I had as an instructor, most of them were very good. Many of them were going back to school, and so they were taking night classes because they were working full-time. A lot of them had a family as well, and they were attending college. In some cases, I knew some people who were working full-time, taking care of a family. They were married and they had children, and they were a leader in their local religious affiliation and service, and they were also going to school full-time. That person had a very full plate, as did some of the others that I had a chance to meet. However, they took that opportunity and took it on as a challenge. They put forth their best effort, and I would personally put them with anyone I met in the same type of discipline in other schools, whether it's a state college, state university, etc. Now, you might be asking, well, what about those that just got their GED or they just barely passed high school? Well, don't think of it like that. The state college system provides a lot of classes that you will not find at other institutions to help bring those people up so that they'll be ready to take those other classes going forward. Now, one other perceived negative with the community college is it does have a tendency to have people take longer to finish than you would expect. Most of the time, you're looking at a 2-year degree, but sometimes people take 5 years or even longer to complete it. And so some people think that, well, maybe it's not that good. Well, the answer is a lot of times those people, as I mentioned before, maybe they're working full-time. Maybe they have a family they have to support. Both. And so they're not able to take a full load. Instead, they're taking 1 or 2 classes every semester, not even taking summers off, to complete it. So while it might take them a little bit longer, it's not because they're not as good a student, it's simply because they have a lot more on their plate. Now, the advantage of community college is actually one of the things that sometimes people think of as a negative. Maybe you weren't the best student in high school. Maybe you have a GED but you couldn't complete high school for whatever reason. Don't think of that as a negative. The state college will take you and help prepare you to get you ready. And they're not going to care what your SAT score is, your ACT score. They're going to make sure that where you are, you'll be brought up to an appropriate level and be able to learn with your peers. And so that's actually, in my opinion, a very strong positive. The second positive that you're going to find is the state college system tends to be the cheapest of any of them. This, of course, is barring maybe if you have a great sports scholarship. And if you get an opportunity to go to a school and they're going to give you a full ride because of a scholarship like in sports or maybe in academics or something, that's a completely different story. But if you're paying cash or you're having to use financial aid, usually the state college will be the cheapest. And that's a big reason why I attended a state college when I was a student. I took care of all my basic courses like English and my calculus classes, my science classes, and all those preliminary things I had to do to be ready to go take my bachelor's degree. I went and looked at the colleges I wanted to attend that was in the state university system, because those were only two schools I knew of at the time. And I figured out what prerequisites I had to have, make sure they would match up, and took them so I'd be prepared and ready going forward. So that's another great advantage to the state college system, and something you can look at. The final advantage I want to tell you about, and this is not universally true, but is true in most cases, is that the state college system a lot of times has smaller classrooms. So I had, for example, approximately 25 to 30 people in my calculus class. And then my Calculus 2 class had about 20 people, and Calculus 3 had a few less than that. If I had gone to the state university system, the one that I was looking at attending initially, they had approximately 700 people in their Calculus 1 class. So that particular class was taught in a huge auditorium, and it still wouldn't hold everyone. So they had to, by closed circuit TV, pipe it into two other smaller auditoriums so that they could teach all 700 people at one time. That's not necessarily the best system to do it, and a lot of schools have moved away from that for some of their classes, but not all. Whereas in a state college system, you usually will have 50 or less students in every class. In many cases, 30 or less. I believe 35 was the max I ever had in one of my classes, but this, of course, is a few years ago and might change. So those are some pros and cons that you might have in looking at the state college system. Next up, we're going to look at the state university system.